Welcome back to the Alec Lewis Show. I am your host, Alec Lewis. This is episode 41, recording on December 12th. This is a Thursday. It's absolutely frigid outside. So what am I doing? I am buried here in my office, grinding away on stories and recording podcasts for you guys. Thanks for being here. Always appreciate you guys hopping on the show. If you have not yet and you're watching on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button down below. You can hit the little alarm bell. It'll give you notifications for episodes. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, you could do similar things over there. I think there's a follow button, a subscribe button. That stuff not only will allow you to get future episodes, but it helps us out, brings more people to the show. And you guys know we want to build the biggest kind of audience group of listeners as we can, because that means more interaction. That means more fun as we get to follow seasons like this one that are pretty incredible. Today's guest is a guy you guys probably know well. His name is Ben Leber. He does sideline work for KFAN during the games. He hosts Twin Cities Live on television. He's a former linebacker. He's the absolute man. Been waiting to do this with him for a long time. Saw him a bunch. I see him in press boxes before these games. We've talked about it. And he was phenomenal as expected. So I think you guys will really enjoy this. We got into pretty much everything. I mean, we talked about the Darnold situation, the future, with that, and then everything from run defense and Kevin O'Connell. And I think it was really, really fun and really insightful for me to even listen to Ben. So I think you guys will enjoy it. This show, as always, is presented by First Resource Bank. That is a member FDIC bank that does really, really good work in the local area. People were clowning me, absolutely clowning me, for saying they had a branch in Lino Lakes or Lino Lakes. And it's not Lino or it's Lino, or it's not Lino or it's Lino. I don't know. I am from Alabama. I am not from here. Chanhassen, Roseville, Savage, these are all new places for me. But yeah, First Resource Bank, that is the presenting sponsor. Some really, really good people over there. Tim Siegley, Aaron Siegley, Charlie Anderson. I mention them almost every episode, but they go to Vikings games. They root nonstop. They can tell you as much about this team as I could. And when you go to your bank, a member FDIC bank that they are, you want to be able to, be around good people. You want them to be on your side. You want them not to be Packers fans. So yeah, no, it's been a really, it's been a blast. I'm grateful for getting to know those guys and for them to endorse this podcast the way they do. But you could, find them in any branch. They've got incredible online banking. It's very easy to use, and I really, really recommend it for those of you in this area that are looking for a really, just great opportunity from a banking perspective. So that's First Resource Bank. They present the show. And with that, the only thing I got on the docket is if you have not, I got a bunch of stuff over at theathletic.com this week. I wrote about Sam Darnold and the options with his future. I wrote about continuity and kind of got into this front office and how they operate and how they think. Tried to give you guys a glimpse into that. I hope that was enjoyed. On Tuesday, I wrote another story that I am blanking on, but now that I'm thinking about it, it's about Kevin O'Connell and the job that he's done. So just a lot going on over at theathletic.com. Have a really, really fun story planned for Monday, the day of Monday Night Football against the Bears, that you guys will enjoy. So go check that out, please. Stay tuned for Monday. Really put in some work for this one. Excited about that, for you guys to read it. So yeah, stay locked in over there. Keep listening to the show. Ben Leber is the guest today. You guys are really going to enjoy this. Let's not waste any more time. Here's Ben Leber. Ben, first, thanks for hopping on the show. How you doing, man?
Alec, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on. This is a long time overdue. We'll give everybody the really long story that I was supposed to come on your podcast. Oh my gosh. Let's say 13 weeks ago, something like that. So I apologize it's taken so long. So I'm happy to be here finally.
No, you were like traveling the world in training camp. I think your family, you guys were going on vacation. I didn't want to bother. I wasn't going to bother that. Come on.
Oh, I know, but you know how the season goes. I mean, it's so wild to me. I mean, as many seasons as we both covered, it's so full of anticipation, and then you get there, and it just like flies by. I mean, within like a blink of an eye, college football is basically over, the regular season. Here we are in December. We've got a handful of games left. Then hopefully we're talking about a long playoff run. And it's like, where did the season go?
It's crazy. I mean, week 15, I was thinking about it the other day. I'm like, literally, it's unbelievable. The amount of stories I've written, the amount of radio hits and TV that you've done, it is wild. I kind of wanted to start like we'll hit the quarterback stuff at the end. I told you that before we hopped on, but I want to start like you stand on the sidelines for these games. So you're standing there in the second half of this Falcons game, and the entertainment was what it was, the shots of the crowd. Like, part of me just wondered what was going through your head watching the second half of that game, watching Justin and Jordan do what they did, and then watching the crowd like embrace it as much as they did. Like, what was going through your head during all of that?
Okay, this is going to sound really grandiose and sort of story esque, like I'm trying to conjure up a movie. But I'm like, I'm thinking in that moment, and I'm not just saying this in hindsight. When I saw Sam Darnold on the sideline with the towel and pumping up the crowd, and he's finally, after this long season, acknowledging, I think, his development, the love that people have for him, and they built with him, and watched him go out and have a historic game. Um, it looked like to me in that fourth quarter, we saw this team finally come together and really believe in themselves. It's almost like, I'm not saying that this is by no means this is the peak, but this is the start of that peak where I think the team that you always hope comes together in December for a playoff run, it's like they all put it together in that fourth quarter. And if it ends up having maybe a storybook ending, or if not, or if we end, maybe we can make a deep run the playoffs, whatever it is, it will go down to, in my estimation, in my mind, the Brian Asamoah forced fumble on the kickoff return
Hmm.
that sort of sparked in this team that we can be tight with the team into the fourth quarter, like they have been for a lot of games, and all they need is this like one little thing of belief that they can overtake mentally and emotionally and physically a football team late into the game. That was it to me. So as I'm watching it, I'm watching like, could this be it? Could this be the turning point in this team? Not just saying that they believe in themselves, and not just like believing kind of like, hey, we're a resilient football team. Like, no, we are a championship level football team. That's what I felt like in that fourth quarter.
Yeah, it almost felt like they had validated to themselves like legitimately what they'd believed throughout the entire process. Even going back to training camp, you talk to people. It's like there was belief, and then you win 5 games, and there is more, and then you lose 2 and respond with 6 wins. Like to me, it makes sense. But it's funny you mentioned Brian Osma because I was thinking about this a little bit. I mean, what people don't see is every day after practice, Brian Asamoah, he doesn't have to do this. He and Cam Bynum go in the indoor, and Cam Bynum lays out these drills, and Brian does it with Cam every single day. And it's like tackling drills. And it's something that Brian noticed with Cam and that he's taken upon themselves. And then to have a guy like Cam wanting to have Brian join him in that, for me, is like it's almost emblematic of what you've probably seen, that I've definitely seen, of just the tightness with this group. And you would know that and be able to kind of, I think, perceive that, from where you stand on the field during the games, but also just having been in locker rooms. There's probably differences in the levels of which these guys are close and not. I'd imagine you'd agree with that.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. I mean, I didn't even know that little quip about the extra work that they put in. I mean, clearly, like even myself included, like when I played, you obviously put in more time and as much time off the practice field and all the other stuff, just working on all of your little weaknesses or strengthening your strengths and all this other stuff. But so it's good to hear them do that. But to your point, I think this team when they talk about like how close they are together, like there is no hierarchy. I mean, I think everybody knows just like instinctively that there are some veterans on the team and there's a little bit of a hierarchy. I mean, obviously the quarterbacks always have a little bit more say, but back in my day when I was playing, it was, hey, rookie, hey, first year, second year guy, shut your mouth. Shut your mouth, do your work, keep your head down. That's just the way of the world. And now they've really embraced this kind of new age thinking, which I fully believe in, that everybody's equal. Like if you earn the right to be on this team, then you're one of us. You don't have to prove yourself. It's already been written. Like you're a part of the team. If you're on the roster, you're a practice squad guy, you're a Minnesota Viking. That's all we need to know. And you see it in some of the Joshua Metellus, like Tellus with Metellus, those things that he does for Vikings.com, the way that he can go around and bop around to individual guys that are not necessarily defensive guys. He can go up to a specialist, he can go to the backup quarterback, he can go whatever. And they all like get along. They're all friends. They're not just like, it doesn't look like to me that they're putting on something just for the cameras. It seems very genuine. And I think that really matters when they're playing on the field.
Yeah, no, there's no question. You see Metellus like talk to Jordan Addison, and I'm like, it's a very interesting dynamic. But to me, and this is a perfect segue. Like I have to think so much of that starts at the top, and when I say the top, I'm talking Kevin O'Connell and the infrastructure. I mean, I know you've gotten to know him well, just like me. Part of me wonders for you. Like I've done a lot of thinking about just his ability to adjust in game, the culture in general, his positivity. But being a former player, I wondered what to you about just what he's accomplished this year and kind of the leadership role that he obviously plays every day. Like what impresses you most about just the job that he's done?
I've grown to appreciate his finely tuned balance at which he leads. And I'll explain briefly that here's this guy that has sort of new age leadership skills. He can relate to the young guys. He can relate to the older guys. He comes from a younger coaching tree, so there is a reputation that comes with that. Maybe a preconceived notion, whether it's accurate or inaccurate. He's a young guy, and he also comes in, and it seems like he can talk to these guys, but I think there is a fiery tenacity to him as well. I think that he has, you look at Brian Flores and the way he walks and the way he just kind of looks, and you're like, that's a defensive coordinator.
Yeah, like
that's a guy
to practice, and I'm just like, yeah, look out below.
I know, like that's a guy that means business, is not going to take any S, and just demands, with a very firm finger, like this is how it's supposed to be done. I think Kevin has that.
Yeah,
but he doesn't exude that from a nonverbal walk. He walks with a confidence, but it doesn't look like he has that, that tenacity to him. And then you see him on the field, and you see the way he carries himself around the team, and the way that he can elevate his mood to match that of an old school football coach. So he's like this. He seems to me like an old soul on the field, where he's like this very young looking man, but has these old school football characteristics about him. So I think that we're watching this guy just kind of like in real time have this perfect blend of generations.
It's funny you say that, because I think externally, like you hear people talk about it, it's all, and I think so much of it is accurate in terms of like the empathy, and like he definitely has that characteristic and the emotional awareness and all that stuff. But just as well as I do, having talked to him behind the scenes and spent time with them and other people, like there is a lot of that. I don't want to use like, it's not Belichickian, but like there is like seeds from just like the work that you have to do and the intensity that you have to bring to be as good as he has been and this team has been, that exist within him, that you just don't always see when it's like NFL films capturing him talking to players after games.
Yeah. And it's funny because, Detroit has the whole, grit thing, and that obviously comes very naturally from their head coach. I mean, he just exudes just, a calloused body, right? I mean, that's just kind of like this old school, hardened, chiseled guy. I think Kevin has that. He just
Yeah.
doesn't wear it the way that, they wear it in Detroit. And so it is funny that I think that he has sort of that old school grit and that intensity that you mentioned. Like, he has all of that without having to like really throw it into your face. So I think the players feel it, they know it, they know that there's an expectation, and he's not going to waver from that expectation.
Yeah. I'm curious, and just to get to this team and think down the stretch. I mean, this to me, this last four games is going to be pretty tough. I don't know about Chicago Monday night with the amount of changes there, but at Seattle, to me, that's going to be like an incredibly hard game. Hosting the Packers with how they've looked of late, to me, is going to be very tough. And I've tried to think, and people have asked me a lot, like, Alec, what are your biggest concerns about this team down the stretch and into the playoffs? And sometimes I'll bring up the turnovers, which they've mitigated of late. Sometimes I'll bring up the defense giving up explosive plays, which still happens from time to time and did Sunday. And because people ask me all the time, I thought I'd ask you, just as you think about this difficult last four games, and then obviously the playoff run that we all hope lasts longer than I think any of us would have ever expected. Like, where does your mind go in terms of concerns just for this team against really good opponents?
I think just controlling the line of scrimmage. As you get later into the season and you get in the playoffs, the ability to consistently run with the football,
Yeah,
is paramount. The ability to stop the run, which our defense has done, albeit from the last two games, maybe not so much. I mean, Arizona is a little bit of a misnomer because 48 yards or so were by Kyler Murray. And it's like, all right, well, yeah, we technically gave up 102 yards to the running backs. Nobody wants to eclipse that 100-yard mark. But certainly this last game, they did run the ball on us a little bit more. And it seems like, is that a trend? Is that an anomaly? Does it seem like our run defense is getting worse? I mean, is that a product of having Ivan Pace on the lineup? If so, how do we correct it? Because he's going to be out for the next two games again. So the thing is, I think that if you want to win championships, yes, you got to do a lot of things really well. You have to control the line of scrimmage. You just do. You look at our pass defense, and yes, we give up explosive plays. We give up a lot of passing yards. We give up a lot in the middle of the field. But if we stop the run and we get down to the red zone, in which we have been fantastic, especially of late, you don't have those middle of the field hits anymore, because that 15-yard dig route that we've been giving up time and time again, guess what? That's now in the back of the end zone. So that window is not there. So you got to find other creative ways around this, amoeba type defense to figure out where are the vulnerabilities. And if you can't run the football, well, then that falls in favor of us. So it comes down, I think, to win championship level football, control the line of scrimmage, because we know what Sam can do when he gets some time on his hands. We know how these guys can get open down the field. And we know what this offense looks like when Aaron Jones is actually running the football and holding on to the football.
It's funny you mentioned run defense. I was not trying to have a conversation with Harrison Phillips yesterday in the indoor, and then I ended up standing next to him. We're talking about Bijan and that offensive line and their scheme, and he's going into run fits, and I'm taking on double teams, and the linebackers can't. And this is your world, but he's trying to explain it to me, and I understand. I think I try to understand as much as I can in terms of scheme and techniques and all this stuff. But I mean, I don't think people understand. I don't think I ever knew before I started covering this just how technical run fits, even at a very base level, can be. And you could speak to that more than I ever could. But I couldn't believe the level of detail at which he was talking to me was mind-blowing, frankly.
Yeah, it can get really into the weeds with that stuff because, on paper, Alec, I mean, if you talk to any defensive coordinator, there's only a few spots in the field for every play that's designed against whatever coverage or front you're in that is really open for vulnerability. And you try to mask that weakness, you try to mask this, and you just hope that they don't see that on that given play. And when it comes to run defense, if you draw anything up on the board, you're like, well, this guy's supposed to be here. This guy's supposed to be here. This safety that's going to rotate, this guy's supposed to be over here. And they're like, yeah, in a perfect world, everybody's got great run fits, there's no place for the running back to go, but we all know that in real time, that's not going to happen. So yes, you can break it down every single play. This guy on the front side's got to be doing this. this guy on the backside of the defense, we called this play. He's got to be doing this. So it's simple. It can be complicated. I think the bottom line is if you're disruptive at the line of scrimmage, run fits don't matter.
And that's
They
like
really
physicality.
don't.
You're talking about just
And that's just
physicality.
physicality. If Harrison Phillips is in charge of the A gap, if you want to get a plus on your grade sheet, you hold your gap, you hold your A gap, you stay on your feet, and then maybe you're a part of the play. You're like, good job, you get a plus. If you want to be an MFer and you want to be disruptive, you take the A gap and you shoot that A gap, and you go out in the backfield and you make Bijan stop his feet, and then you don't get the tackle, but somebody else does because now he's stopped his feet and everybody just like collapses on him. Now you get a plus and an attaboy. And then now you look at the offense and they're like, how do we block this guy? Like, oh man, well now do we have to put 4 hands on this guy before we go up to the linebacker? Like, the point is getting back just playing physical, disruptive, and being a menace on the field with your front 4. That's really how you stop the run. It shouldn't come down to meticulous, oh man, we just missed that one gap. We missed the one gap because the safety was over rotated and he saw something else. Like, if you're into that world, then you're not playing physical football. You're certainly not playing, playoff style football.
I will say, talking to Harrison, it sounds like the Falcons' plan, and I know, like, to me at least, it just looked like a lot of outside zone where the running back presses the edge and then kind of bounces it. It sounds like some of the ways they were blocking that stuff was different than what the Vikings had faced in the past. And Harrison was pretty blunt with me in terms of like, we are not happy this week. Like, yeah, we won that game, but the interior defensive line room is like pretty heated about it. And to me, and he even said this too, which I agree with. It's like, it's nice to have, with how good they've been stopping the run, kind of as they're about to approach this stretch where you face a Seahawks team that's willing to run downhill, a Packers team that's willing to run downhill. It's probably good to have this type of stuff in your craw at this point, given what they're going to face down the stretch.
I agree with you. I think this is the whole thing about being tested. You're battle tested. Like, you've been through. Yeah, you might win some games. I mean, you might lose some games, but if you see a lot of different schemes and you're like, okay, I mean, teams are getting away from running downhill at us. Now they're going to stretch it. Going back to this Atlanta game, it seemed like to me they're keeping it front side, or I'm sorry, they hit the cutback in the first half, and then the second half they're like, all right, well, if they're going to make the adjustment and they're going to attack that cutback, let's keep everything front side. So they changed the blocking scheme a little bit to get a little more push and wash on that front side, and so they kept things front side. So they really kept us off balance, but it was a lot of just perimeter style of setups.
Sure.
Okay, well, now we go back to the drawing board and you really coach that up. And so now when you face a team like Seattle, you're like, okay, we're not going to get beat on the stretch cutback, in the zone cutback. We've already shown that they can't beat us going straight downhill in the power game because we've been stopping that all year round. Now what are you going to do? What else are you going to throw at us? You're going to throw some counter plays at us. You're going to throw, some trap plays at us. You might see those things, and I kind of hope we do. I hope that Green Bay, we're talking about this in Green Bay, and they're like, oh man, they were trapping the crap out of Harrison Phillips. I mean, he was getting so far upfield, and he was blowing up everybody in Seattle, so they decided to trap him. They just influenced the crap out of him. They let him have a free run, and we just like banged him from the side. I'm like, well, good, because now when we get in the playoffs, we've seen everything. Yeah. And now we have a reference point for everything during that course of the week. Like, got to be ready for this. Got to be ready for this. And then, hopefully we're talking about it in a positive way after the game's over.
Yeah, you said trenches. I mean, pass protection to me, it's such a hard gauge until you go back, until I at least go back in the film. And even then, I don't know if it's like, well, that was a great way for defensively. They attacked protection on that play. What have you thought of pass protection in general? Because at times, sometimes I think I'm not hard enough on some of the interior. Sometimes I think I'm not giving them enough credit. Brian O'Neill to me all year has been spectacular, and we just don't really talk about it. But that unit to me, because I agree with you in that the trenches are going to be so important, I'm curious how you thought about that unit.
I think overall they've been really, really good. I was not happy with the way they played last week against Atlanta. Because as much as Atlanta blitzed more than they have in the past, it wasn't the blitzes that got to the quarterback. It was a 4-man rush. And I think that's what I was a little mystified by. When we are thinking blitz and we are expecting blitz, there's an over communication that needs to happen, and you have to be very clear about who's blocking what, who's blocking where. Even if this linebacker is coming from depth, or this nickel's coming from depth, like running backs and tight ends all have to be aware
Sure.
of what's going on. But when they just brought four guys, I think their first two sacks were just a four-man rush, and then we had, on the third sack, we were waiting on this out and up from Justin on the left sideline, and they blocked it up great. I mean, their cornerback just squatted on that out and up. Sam waited for him, didn't see him, and all of a sudden he felt the pressure of the pocket collapsing and took the sack. And it's like, all right, that was more of a coverage sack, so I can't really blame the offensive line, but I really hope that they get that fixed going into this next game, as well. As if you're going to get beat because a guy like Brian Flores is just bringing one too many guys,
Right.
and you've got a free runner and you just didn't see it or you didn't recognize it. Like, okay, fine, we'll have an answer for that next time. But when you're giving up sacks on four-man rushes, like you can't have that. So, but overall, yes, they have been phenomenal.
And for Cam Robinson to come in here when he did, and to me, I mean, I don't know if he's been perfect, but to do what he's done, I mean, hey, it's a good move. Like, I give them credit for doing that and trying to maximize this year, knowing what they have, honestly. But I mean, you haven't really, at least me, like, I haven't thought about him a ton during these games. It's kind of unbelievable, and we don't really talk about it.
No, I know. I mean, that's, you talk to any one of those offensive linemen and that's how they feel about it. Like, it's the whole Will Smith, keep the name out of the mouth. And, you don't want to talk about him at all, because they're like, okay, if you're talking about me, then I created a penalty or I did something wrong. We have quietly not talked about him, and that's in such a good way. I can't believe, I've got a buddy that's down in Jacksonville, and when we picked him up, he's like, look, man, you got a good one. Like, you've got a guy that got some dog in him. He's gonna bring some intensity to your offensive line, and we saw that in his first game. I think we had one of our players go on the opposing team's sideline, and he was right there to kind of mix it up, and he was kind of done like, dang, Cam, all right, like, are you protecting one of your own? I like it. But it's probably that old prison mentality. He's the new fish coming in. He's got to prove his worth. But I like it. I like the way his intensity at which he plays with. And you're right. He, from a fundamental standpoint, he is rock solid, man. I mean, he is out there earning himself another contract with another team, because I think we all kind of know he's here just to help us out this year, and then CD gets back and he's going to be just as good and better. So he's really helped our team out, and he's really helped himself.
No question. I mean, the quarterback conversation, and I'll let you run with it. But I did a story, and we're talking on Thursday. I did a story for Thursday morning, kind of just going through all the options in my head. And some of it was just studying the franchise tag and kind of what that means and what that doesn't. But I mean, I guess from my perspective, it's been so fun to watch Sam have the year he's been. And I give Kevin O'Connell a lot of credit. I give, obviously, the skilled players in the offensive line a ton of credit. But I also give Sam, I mean, the fortitude with his journey to do what he's done. I think he deserves a heck of amount of credit. And I think he's earned whatever contract he signs, whether it's here or elsewhere. I mean, how I know you've been on the radio, you've been asked about this stuff. Like how have you thought about just what Sam's done and then what the future of that might mean?
I mean, what Sam's done is remarkable. It really is. I mean, I don't think anybody, you could probably even ask himself when the season's over. I mean, he probably didn't expect to have this type of season. So I think it's been a pleasant surprise. It's been great. He's earned himself another contract, just like you said. As far as what we do with him, I understand that there are some business levers that we can pull and we can utilize. And I do think the franchise tag is a part of it. I just get the sense that don't do this to this guy. Like, this guy's been nothing but a guy that has played fairly with you the whole time. He wanted to come here. He knew the situation. He knew before the draft that we are going to be drafting a guy that's going to take over. He knew he's going to be a mentor. He's going to have to compete and all those things. He's been a great soldier. He really has. Could we get some compensation for him if we franchise him and, we decide not to match? Yeah, all those things are in play. Should we do that from a business standpoint or from just a personal standpoint? I wouldn't. I mean, look, man, you've done everything that we've asked you to do. We're so happy for you. Go out and get a Derek Carr-esque, contract. Prove yourself, with another team. Hopefully he makes a smart choice and he realizes now after being with KOC, okay, this really is what I'm good at. Like,
Yeah.
I'm good at this scheme. I'm good with this type of personnel. I'm good with, these types of X's and O's. I now understand myself better as a quarterback to get the best out of me. Whatever team that is, I just hope he goes out there and does it, maximizes his contract, is a long-term starter, and you can always look back at his time with the Minnesota Vikings that really changed the path of his career. I don't think personally that you want to manipulate that. I don't think you want to take advantage of that. Maybe there are people out there that are saying like, you're silly not to, like, that you're not playing the game. You're not playing the game within the game. The game within the game is they do this to everybody.
Sure. It's just a business. Right.
Yeah, it's a business, and I love and hate that part of the business. But I think that there's an emotional, personal component to all this that I think the best thing that you can do is, and for what it's going to tell the rest of the league. We win all these awards from the Vikings organization about how much they treat and respect the players and the players' wives and all this other stuff, all these good deeds that we're doing. And then you go out there and you use this guy as a pawn. Yeah, people might look at me and say, like, you're ridiculous. Look what we could recoup and how we can build this team. And that's fine. But I just think that, look, man, if you want to walk the walk, you treat this guy with respect. You don't slap a tag on him. You let him go to wherever team that he and his agent feel like is best for him. You say thank you. You remain lifelong friends, and you wish him all the best.
Well, I think that's a phenomenal point that you bring up too. It's like, what is the value of, let's say they were to tag and trade him and generate a second round pick? Like, yeah, obviously you get a second round pick and you use that on a player who may make a great impact. But what is that impact compared to the impact that it would work in free agency for guys to want to come here, for you to validate they have validated. They've been, NFLPA report card, Kevin O'Connell, and how people have talked about him and treat all of that stuff is because they have validated the way they've talked over and over again. And so to go against that action, and like I framed it as like you would be injecting turbulence into what has been a perfect relationship. I do think it is a great point to talk about, like, what is the value long term compared to maybe the value generated short term. It's a very interesting one, and I think you're right to talk about it that way.
Yeah, and I appreciate that understanding. I think that the long term versus the short term, and this is where it just furthers my point. This organization and Kwesi and his staff and KOC, they have many times over talked about the long term decision making that they make within that office, and they don't look at themselves personally as like, oh, I've only got a year or two left in my contract. I'm only going to be working towards the next year or two. Like, they are working towards, they see themselves as part of this organization for a very long time. So as such, they want to build this team for the future and really build a foundation, a championship level foundation where your window of opportunity to win is not just a year or two, like I had in 2009. It's, let's kick this door open and have this window of opportunity for 8 years, 10 years. Let's do that. Let's build to that sort of winning culture. And so I do think that you have to make decisions like that. And to your point and to what I was talking about, like, yeah, second round draft pick may yield you a heck of a player, but does that hurt you long term? How teams now, like, oh yeah, remember those Minnesota Vikings? They used to think that they were like cared about the integrity of the players and whatever. They kind of did them dirty a little bit. So, that's a long term ramification.
And I will also say, like, it's easy for me to get caught up in the emotion, even for me to get caught up in the emotions of like, man, this guy's, the throws he's making are phenomenal. But I think when you take a step back and you lay out like the possibilities, and it's like you pay, let's just say $40 million for Sam Darnold, or you pay 10 for a veteran quarterback that you pair with JJ McCarthy, who might be ready, and use that other excess money for, let's say, like a Trey Smith right guard or a DJ Reed cornerback, like then what is the potential for your team in terms of like paying the quarterback or using that money elsewhere? I think when you really take a step back and think about what you could build with that extra money, that's where it also makes sense. Now there's questions with JJ's health, or like you'd have to make sure of that, and like to expect another veteran quarterback to do what Sam Darnold's done, probably not fully fair. But I think when you think about the packages that come with both options, it's hard not to look at the idea you could bring in an elite right guard or an elite man-to-man cover corner, and you wouldn't just exponentially increase what's possible, you know?
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, for so long, this franchise has been a little bit handcuffed with Kirk Cousins' contract, and I truly think I just get the feeling that they want to flip that other way around. They want to stop doing that. They want to see what this franchise can look like when they can be buyers in the market and they can, pay for some of these big time veteran players that are proven. You don't have to wait for them to develop through the draft. I fully expect us to be big time free agent players this next year. And that only happens if you have cap space. And that only happens if you let Sam Darnold go. And there's a whole reason why they brought Daniel Jones in. I mean, Daniel Jones is right now penciled in to be the backup next year to JJ McCarthy. And he can learn, and he can hopefully use the same stop as Sam Darnold did. If he has an opportunity to go in there and play some games, maybe he proves to everybody else that nope. There's an extra gear that I have, and what you guys saw with the New York Giants that's the old one. That's the old Daniel Jones. This is the new guy that's ready to lead another team.
It's gonna be very interesting to watch. Last one, I'll get you out of here. Just how much fun have you had this year? Like I was talking to the editor this morning. I'm like, this has just been. It was just not, at least for me. I can speak for myself. Like, did I expect them to maybe win 7 games and like that would have still been over? Yes, but like this has been. I imagine for you, just as fun as as it's been for me. It has been a blast, really.
It's been a blast. I mean, let's think about this, Sir Alec. We're 11-2 right now, and we're talking about, this is typical Minnesota Vikings fans. We're now debating whether or not we're going to keep Sam Darnold and what's going to happen in the offseason. It's like, guys, we are in the midst of a really, really good season and possibly a championship run. And here we are debating all week long about Sam Darnold and not the Chicago Bears and not the Seattle Seahawks and not the Packers or the Lions. That's where we are. But I've been a part of a lot of bus rides from away games and all this other stuff. And when you lose a game and you're traveling back home, there really isn't a more depressing sports feeling than being a part of those charters and being a part of those things as a player, anybody part of the organization. When you lose and you're a perpetual losing team and you're having a bad season, road trips suck.
Yeah.
And that just piles on and compounds to make it a really stressful season. So yes, am I having a good time? Hell yes, I'm having a good time. Because, now we can, you travel with the team and everybody's in good spirits. You come home and everybody's in good spirits. You can think about the possibilities and start dreaming about, the good things that can happen down the road, as opposed to, oh boy, we're sitting right now at the number 6 pick in the draft, and we still have 5 weeks left to go in the season. Let's start paying attention to the draft and who we're going to get in free agent. Like, there's time for that. I don't want this season to end because it's from week to week. It's just been a blast.
That's why, like, even writing about the Darnold future, I'm just like, I'm enjoying the present, but it's like the psychology. It could be studied of just why people do that to themselves. And I get it; it's important, but it's so much fun to take yourself out of that. It's
as if the fan base doesn't realize that we have time to talk about, like. It's not like the season gets over, whether it's the first round of the playoffs or it's in New Orleans at the Super Bowl. It's not like decisions have to be made with Sam Darnold 24 hours after that.
Right. Yeah.
we guys, we have days and weeks to talk about this, and the Vikings do not have to make any decision for a while until the next league year starts in March. So, guys, like, and you know how much that we can dive into a topic, and when it comes to sports, we could hash all of this out in 24 hours. We really could. If we had to make a decision from the time that the game was over to the next day, oh, we could debate it and we could talk about it and we could unturn every single stone. So we got time to do that.
No question. Well, thanks for doing this, man. It was fun to finally get to do it. I appreciate you hopping on. I will see you Monday night, I guess, at the yard. Should be fun.
I know. I can't believe we're still doing a double header, man. Like we need to have the primetime spot all to ourselves.
Yeah. It's Falcons Raiders. Maybe I was like, what are we doing? Yeah. It's
no.
Anyway.
At least we got the A crew.
Exactly. Yeah. Buck and Aikman. I told PA the other day, I'm like, when you have Olsen, and he's like, why does that matter? I'm like, it matters. You feel it when it is the A crew. So no, should be good.
You feel when it's the A crew, you definitely feel like it's an important game.
Yeah. Without question. Thanks, Ben. We'll talk soon.
Thanks, Alec.
Appreciate it. And that'll do it for the Alec Lewis Show and my conversation today with Ben Leber. Hope you guys had as much fun listening to that as I had recording it and talking to Ben. It's always great. His perspective is as good as you're going to find in this market, both with his knowledge of the game and his entrenched feel for kind of what's going on. So had a lot of fun doing it. Be curious what you guys thought of his opinions regarding the future with Sam Darnold. It's something I've thought about already. We'll think about a lot more, but was great to hear his perspective. Would like to have him on again, probably around the playoffs, so we'll try to do that. But thank you guys for listening. The two things I'll say, like I said at the top, if you're not checking out the stories over at theathletic.com, please go subscribe, go read some of the stuff over there. That's where I do my day job. That's where I try to bring as much insight as I can. Have a really fun story planned for Monday that I think you guys will enjoy. And then if you're new here, you made it all this way, you're watching on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button. You're listening on Apple or Spotify or iHeart. Please follow us over there. This is a show presented by the member FDIC Bank, First Resource Bank. So go check them out here in the local area. Lino Lakes, Lino, whatever the heck it is. You will find a great branch of theirs over there. That'll do it for episode 41 of the Alec Lewis Show. Thank you guys for being here. Enjoy your freezing cold weekend, which I'm sure it will be, and we will talk to you guys very soon.